When we come into this world, we are just a dot. We are soul. We are a tiny little soul that came down into this universe. Okay? As we grow, as we live, as we experience, our narrative gets written. So now instead of just a dot on a paper, we have a story being written. Every page, we turn the page. My story is getting longer. I am now 50 years old. My story, I'm on my second book of life. I'm on my third book. I keep writing. But my soul, that's just that dot on the first paper, that has never changed. That's the soul Hashem gave me. And that soul was separated from my other part of my soul that completes me. That completes me and the story that Hashem created the world for. So me and my husband and Hashem, that's why I'm down here. So things happen and I have to pay attention to it so I can get back to before my narrative has been told. What does my soul look like and what does it need and what can I contribute as a soul in this world?
Each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you confidently navigate life on your own so you can achieve real growth and independence and take ownership of this foundational stage of your life. For additional resources, tips, and to stay up to date on future episodes, sign up for the On Your Own newsletter, linked below in the description. Looking forward to spending some time with you today. And now, to this week's episode. Welcome, Hindel, to the podcast. We're so excited to have you. Who are you and what is your mission as it relates to the work that you are doing?
I never set out to become a dating coach, and yet here I am. I started teaching at Mayanot about 8 years ago. I'm going into my 9th year, Baruch Hashem. And then 3 years into that, I started teaching at Seminary and then different random places. I keep coming across women of marriageable age. And so just as the teacher, and by default, as I teach Chabad philosophy, there's like so much that people want to know, and they just ask their teacher questions. And I had gone to school before I even started teaching at a school called Torat Anefesh, and it's Torah and Psychology. And that's under the auspices of Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg. And his whole premise is that we have Hasidus, we have the joy of literally seeking out the mission of our soul. Like, what is my soul down here to do? And with learning all of that, their premise is to really teach people how to find the essence of their soul. What is their mission statement in life? So although I'm not this trained therapist, I am trained in coaching people how to get to their best self. So people like to call it a life coach. I specifically gathered information and dug deep into the dating coaching world. And so I've been doing this for many, many years. I officially got, a certificate so that if anyone should ask, which of course no one does, about 13 years ago. And so that's kind of who I became now. But I am a mother of 7. I'm a wife of Swerdlov. I've been living in Jerusalem for 28 years now, married almost 29. A part of my identity, which I don't like to be, this is my identity, but we've lost a child, Shula. And so we've gone pretty public on how to heal from grief. We opened up a library in her memory. We talk about her often. We've all been through therapy because of it, and therefore more aware of how life goes for others and us in our orbit. And so I've just evolved into, well, now that I'm 50, we keep evolving. And so this is who I am today. Very much, I've done some public speaking, hopefully inspiring people around the world how to touch base with their true neshama and how to be our best self in life. So I'm going to keep trying. And as long as people are calling, I'm there to help. And that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
That's really beautiful. And so you made your first shidduch, you said 20 years ago. And what was that?
More, because I actually coached 2 of their children when they were dating. Yeah, so this is crazy full circle for me. So I guess it's been 25 years. Wow. It's really it's a gift. I feel privileged to do this work.
And you were saying that, what is the mission of my soul? And that you were learning kind of that area, and then you went into the dating world. How did that transition happen?
So I only started learning after my daughter Shula passed away in this Torah HaNefesh, Torah and psychology, because I was doing a lot of psychological work and dealing with healers and therapists and how to find myself again and not be identified by the loss of a child. And so you realize, like, oh, I have so much power, and the grief is actually part of my power. What my story is my power. And so it's like you don't keep it for yourself. And so you talk about it. And then people, I don't want to say they're addicted to it, but people want more. And, the frivolity in life is just, it's so silly because really everyone's begging for something deeper and something more. And so I found myself being useful in another way. So as opposed to just preparing classes, which has been, one of my biggest gifts is starting to teach. That was, 9 years ago. Um, it was, wow, I can make a difference even deeper. Like we can still be doing more and more, and that's kind of how this just kept growing.
Wow,
Yeah. I think you're my third
beautiful.
podcast that I'm talking about dating, which is fascinating to me because I'm still learning about dating all the time. And I have my mentors who help me for cases that are way above my pay grade because I'm not a
Mm,
therapist, although I'm thinking of going back to school for it. But because I'm not a
cool.
therapist, yeah,
Exciting.
I know that there's like a lot of cases that are so out there. And I know it's not a dating issue, it's an issue in the dating.
Amazing. I wanted to start actually by asking what, in your experience working with seminary students or young women who are in learning spaces, and then continuing that with in the dating world, what do you find is from the biggest misunderstanding that from young women have when it comes to this topic of dating?
You posed that question in our pre-questions, what to talk about today. And I find it interesting because it's almost confusing in the question because it is where people are at today. So it's not a misunderstanding. It's how come we're not there yet? How come already in high school, which I know that the Rebbe highly recommended that high schools already should be learning about Taras HaMishpacha. I'm guessing a part of that, and without impinging on the Rebbe's words, but that would lead to so many questions about relationships. What's important when we get married? What should we be looking for when we get married? So if these topics were talked about a lot and deeply in high school, then people would already be open to, oh, so what am I looking for? What is important to me? Aside from chemistry, butterflies, and fireworks about, oh my God, he's so cute, I'm so cute. What do we get together? It's what is the purpose of our union? Like, how are we making a difference in Hashem's world since that's really the only reason we're here? As long as we're doing something for Hashem. And so a misunderstanding that girls have, I think, is that marriage is like, oh, who's going to be my next boyfriend? Okay, so he's going to be for life because he's going to be my husband. But the picture of who we marry is so much bigger than that. It's what is our mission as a couple because we will be changing the face of this world.
What do you think is the result of this not very often being talked about earlier, these things that you've been speaking about and this topic in general of marriage and the importance?
I don't know that it points to one specific thing, but I will say because it's 2025 and all the girls today have phones. Like my daughter, she's 15. As soon as she went into high school, we got her phone. I wish I was able to push it off another year, but she was literally the last man standing.
Wow.
So we
Yeah.
got her the phone. It's a pathetic excuse because I'm sure it didn't do her life any good. All that competitiveness that comes through a farkakta phone. Now that girls are more aware of what's going on outside, they have different desires, they have different awareness, they are more aware of themselves in certain ways, and yet it also crushes their spirit because of what they are aware of. They're feeding into a frenzy of modern society without the spiritual capability of getting them to a healthy place with it. Their
Mm.
judgment, their lack of judgment is so sad to witness. And therefore, there's a lot of misunderstanding because of lack of self confidence. They do not know their purpose, why they're important. They could be getting unconditional love from parents, but oftentimes they're not getting it from outside sources. Friends are a little bit more jealous today. They're not mature enough to give space and lift other people up. Like when we were younger, I don't know if it was across the board, but we were so happy to make space for friends to be wonderful. And now there's a lot more competition going on. It's sad to witness. And you're a little bit concerned about who you are, who am I meant to be, and then where do I fit in? And so you create a narrative of where you think you're supposed to be. So that's a misunderstanding because you're not using yourself as front and center of what does Hashem want for me? This is where I will be my best self. And that gets lost.
So interesting that you're saying, I'm getting almost like this picture here of that on the one hand, as young women, we're being confronted with things we never had before because of the phone. And that as a result of that, we have lack of self-confidence, more of this competitiveness, not that strong friendship that maybe used to have, and not a clear purpose. And at the same time, we haven't been equipped with the spiritual tools that we maybe get later on in life to deal with what's hitting us earlier.
I actually think it could be, there's a school here also under Rabbi Ginsburg. It starts from kindergarten. Like the Rebbe gave us the 10 Mitzvayim, we are a mensch when we know those Mitzvayim. What does it mean to be a Jew? So before we're even taught about mitzvos, the Rebbe gave us those things, how to be a mensch. Those are the 10 Mitzvayim, okay? Know that Hashem is there for you, Shema Yisrael. We came out of Egypt. Like, this is why we are here. And this is our purpose. And then imagine learning already in kindergarten, pre-1A, first grade, the essence of our soul that we learn in Tanya. So we would just be pumped up. By the time we got to high school, we'd be, so imagine being on a silver platter, given our, who am I in first grade? Who am I in eighth grade? What does Hashem think capable of me? If we start all that younger, I think that we would have less issues. But, I'm dealing with wonderful, wonderful people, men and female. And the lack of confidence is really what gets people. They don't think that they deserve more. They literally don't think they deserve more. So if he wants me, I should really want him because he's a great guy. He has a nice family. He has a really good job. Like, what? You're a queen. You decide. Now with that comes the different caveats in dating. But yeah, I think that's the first thing we need to know about talking about dating. Know who you are. I'll go off on a tangent here for a minute, and really parents need to hear this. But so many parents send their children out to date, and they say, oh, let them get their feet wet. I don't know if he's the right one, but let them get their feet wet. So the rule of dating it's a rule of thumb, permission to date is permission to marry. You don't date without thinking, this might actually be my husband. Like, we don't just, oh, he's just a guy. Yeah, go on a coffee date. No. Can this man be my husband? Your first date, you should already really believe there was a chance this man is going to be my husband. Mm-hmm. So to get your feet wet, what the parent is saying is she doesn't really know who she is. So if she dates, then she'll see maybe that's good, that's not good. Then she'll know who she is better for herself. No. Go to your mashpia, go to your parent, go to your big sister, or go to a therapist and figure out who you are before you start. This is not a game. This is Hashem's plan for the world. We were created to fulfill Hashem's mission. So my dating, my marriage is part of his big plan. That's huge. We don't get to just, get your feet wet. We have to take it very seriously. It is a sacred mission.
I'm smiling very big here because that's kind of what happened to me, that I wasn't dating. It was the year after seminary, and then some guy came up, and my parents called me. They're like, we couldn't find a reason to say no. We looked and looked and looked for a reason to say no. We couldn't find one. Do you want to date him? And then they were like, listen, you could just go buy already some clothes so you have them for dating for next year. That was literally like, that was... And then 4 dates later, I ended up getting engaged to him. The whole thing was like, oh, you get your feet wet. And then I was like, oh, wait, but this guy is the one. What just happened? So that's very interesting. And there were definitely certain tools and things that I wish that I had worked on before. And it's so interesting because I used to have this attitude. I don't know if you experienced this in seminaries, but when I was in sem, whenever they would talk about marriage, which they would, I'd had this attitude of, you're shoving marriage down our throats. That's like kind of what the narrative was. Yeah, especially, I don't know. And I was definitely in that group. Like, we're so young and there's life before and there's other things other than marriage. Like, that was really the way that I thought. And then I got married the next year after seminary. So,
there's so much there, and I'm not, your marriage. But obviously you knew that he was your basher, so you did it. Most people don't get engaged in 4 dates. But here's the thing. If we dial it back a couple years, to date for marriage means I am sitting across from someone who may be my husband. So if I'm asking the right questions and I'm feeling the right feels, and he's a mensch, and we are going to accomplish the world together, we are going to make our home the everlasting edifice for Hashem, then the answer is yes. And it could be in 4 dates. I don't highly recommend it today for most people, but I
Yeah.
think but you're cerebral and you're an intellectual, and so you were able to come to a conclusion. If 1 + 1 = 2 and 2 is what I want, then this is the answer. So yeah, you might have had another year or two traveling to Thailand and Philippines or something, and then maybe you would have never married Yossi, and that would have been a shame because he's your Bashar. So Hashem knew exactly what he was doing for you, and your parents, thank God, are your best teammates, and I know them, so they're right on board with that. But not everyone is mature enough. Like I know you left home at a really young age, which means you had to
Hmm.
build relationships, build character on your own, not in the confines of your parents' home. So
Yeah.
you were molded differently than most people your age. And so where it might not be advisable within 4 dates, it also might work for some. So, you
Hmm.
have to again know yourself. You might be that person. Excellent. So it is very individual.
I want to go to this know who you are. For somebody who's in a stage where they're not yet dating and they want to work on the knowing who they are now, so by the time they get to there, they feel ready and they are ready to go into the stage. How do you work on knowing who you are? What does that look like?
Well, I think we do it all our life, and at different stages of our lives, we pay attention to that to do. So when you talk about marriage, know who you are. Where do I see myself? Am I always just trying to be the extra girl in the clique? Am I going to make a difference? Where is my personality shining? Where do I feel most stable? Who am I? And by the way, not everyone can get there on their own. Take a few friends, ask honest questions with each other. If you feel protected and held and safe in a little circle, go for a powwow. What's the best thing about me? You tell me what you think about me. I'll tell you what I think where you shine. And then with what other people think of you and what you think of yourself, you're like, oh, let me inch closer. Who's the real me? No one on a date who starts talking about their life should make you think, oh, maybe that's me now. What? You come with who you are. No one should change you. Now we should forever be evolving to be better. But my character, that's what Hashem gave me. That's special for me. So where in that lies my talent? Where in that lies my attention? And how do I know myself better? And people today journal. Good, keep journaling. Be honest with yourself. If your journals go to no one, what would you tell yourself when no one's looking? Be honest. How powerful are you? And what really do you need in a husband? I coached a woman recently. She was in her 20s and she was like a very big powerhouse, a powwow type of person. Effervescent, really bright, a teacher, out there, leads groups. And she always was dating guys that also have that power energy. And then she was like, the truth is, I think I'd love to just be quiet. I would love to live like on a farm. I want to be part of a community and sometimes be able to go back into my little space. And then, of course, I can still give classes. So, okay, let's not be 35 when we figure that out. Let's figure that out by 21, 22, and let's get there sooner. Self aware means you can get to who you are sooner. You are aware of yourself. And if you need help with it, go get help. There's so much out there, so many modalities. You can choose any.
One of the things you said was be honest. Like sit down and if you could just write in a journal, you know, anything that comes up, what's the real me and the self-awareness. What I noticed is that sometimes being honest with ourselves is very difficult and we actually can live many years lying to ourselves. So how do you advise somebody who's afraid to be honest with themselves because they're afraid to confront the truth?
I mean, think about this for a second because, you could also crush someone's spirit if you're too hard on them and say, oh, that's not you. So there is a gentleness that needs to be had when dealing with this type of question. And so I
Yeah.
don't know if you don't feel safe with a group of people, then that's not your crew. But you have to find some safe space. And even if it's reaching out to someone, like there's a hypnotherapist I work with, and I send many clients to her. Her name is Patrice, and she is amazing. Hit me up for the number after class. But what she does is in one session, she's not there to be your therapist and deal with all your past trauma and your relationships with your family and everything that ever happened to you till you're 25, okay?
Mm-hmm.
She's there to say, let's look at your subconscious. Who are you? Why are you blocking your true self from coming to the center of life? Why do people date men that are rude to them? You deserve so much more. You say, oh, but he's so great and he's going to go places and he's so talented. What? You are the queen? Why would you date someone that doesn't talk to you nicely? He's out so fast. You're not there to train him. So if you're true to yourself, it is scary and you have to be honest, but then get someone to help you get there. Unblock the subconscious parts of you that are blocking your way to knowing your beauty. Like, you are incredible. The world today would not be the same without you. That's why you are here today. If the world could go on without you, you'd really be, like we said before, back with Hashem, upstairs in heaven. But you're that powerful that the world today could not exist without Hindel. So what am I doing today? But then we have to understand this. Therein lies my power. My power is very special. And yes, and you know what? And it's an act of practice and it's a muscle, and we can keep doing it till we believe it. They say faith it till you make it. Just believe it. Faith it till you make it. Yeah, don't fake it till you make it. Really faith it. Believe it's who you are.
It's an act of practice.
Yes, it's our bitachon muscle that I am fabulous and I trust that Hashem has put me here for a very good reason. And then you stand a little taller, you walk a little faster.
I have heard this from some girls, so I'm going to bring it up. That they say, doesn't that sound like arrogant and self-centered and self-absorbed to think that you're so amazing? And what if I actually know the truth about myself, which is that I'm not that amazing?
It's not arrogance. If Hashem is before you, when you make these choices, when you say these statements, Hashem is much bigger than you. You're not God. So if you make yourself a little smaller and the rest of the space is filled with Hashem, then Hindel is amazing. This is me. Hashem is everywhere. But if I'm fantastic, I'm amazing. I know that we just had 30 people for Shabbos. We didn't even hear the sirens. The singing was going. The food was delicious. I could pat myself on the back for all that. But why is it okay for me to do that? Because I know that my higher power was literally doing this because this is what Hashem wants from us. All my guests that didn't have a space, or all the people that want to know what a Shabbos looks like, I didn't do it for me. No one's paying me to make my Shabbosim. You know this living here in Jerusalem. So it's for Hashem. It's for Hashem. And when you tell Hashem, I'm doing this for you, and you bring Hashem into your life, when we need to talk to Hashem, we need to call out Hashem, we need to say when we're doing something, Hashem, this one's on you, then we change the attitude from arrogance. It's arrogance if you think you did it. Hashem allowed you to be that person. And therefore, we give tzedakah before we cook. And therefore, we give tzedakah when we do something big. And we say to Hashem, this is for you. I'm on it. And it's because of you. So the false sense of bravado is not okay. It has to be removed.
The next question I had was, why do you think that the topics of dating and marriage are relevant to a seminary girl who may not start dating for a few years down the line?
Okay. Good, but now, of course, this is my ego saying, I just remember the term is called imposter syndrome. When we think we're not good enough because we're faking and we're copying the real people, that's so sad. I'm guilty of that. And, I'm not good enough on that. Really put that aside. If you're doing it for Hashem, then get up there and do what you're asked to do, Okay, put that aside. But about the girls, I will tell you, and I think we discussed it on the phone before this, I hesitate to teach dating in seminary because everyone's here in Israel for a good time. They're, either they're meeting the soldiers in the shuk or they're not, but everyone's a little bit more loose. Everyone's loving Israel. Hashem is so available here. It's exciting even to be religious, Jewish, and Israel gives us that gift. And so they're not really serious about thinking of your future. So I used to teach this somewhere like after Hanukkah, and then I realized these girls are not hearing me. So now I started teaching it literally the last month before girls leave. And it still might be too soon for some. But at the end of the day, look at you. What age did you say you got married?
I was engaged at 19. And then
so engaged at 19 and married at 20? Okay. So, someone like you, we know many 19-year-olds that got engaged. And they could do it. And obviously it was their basher because they're married. And they have beautiful family and wonderful relationships. And they just started it earlier than some. But to not bring up what our future is about, and really, we are wired to look for the other part of our soul. So if my soul is 100% complete as Hindel, I know that when Hashem brought me down here, he separated me, though, from the other part of my soul. So my desire to be reunited with the person that makes me 100% me, it's a desire and I'm going to want it. So imagine not teaching it to women who are off on their, adventures of life. So even though I get many calls from women 22, 23, and they just started dating, there are people that are dating at 19 and 20, and they're very ready to start a home. And they've got their intention in the right place. So we must talk about this. And I always feel, and I say a lot of wacky things in the class, marriage therapy is a must if you see that you're not talking nicely to each other and you're not solving a problem. Now, they're not hearing about marriage and they're certainly not thinking about problems because they're thinking about the butterflies and the white dress they want to wear at a wedding. But I know that if they're 26 years old and they're having an issue with their spouse, even Hindel said we should be going to marriage therapy if something comes up. We married amazing people, but not always are we feeling our best, not always are they feeling our best. How do we talk to each other? So to preempt life with giving them tools to understand, I'm going to be heading into something. It's not front and center in my cortex, but it will be at some point, and then I will bring it back, and the amygdala will show it to me, and I will then understand, oh, that's what she was saying. And I'll tell you the
Just like
nicest thing
prompting.
about me, yeah, when it processes, the nicest thing about me being a coach right now is I am honored. Every single time I have a student call me to work with them, I'm like, oh, she remembers. She heard me. She wants more of it. She knows that she liked what I had to say, even though it did not register back then, but she believes that I know the process of what would be wonderful for her. And so we can work together. So when I get that, it's really very special for me. And that's why it's a must to talk about it younger. I will tell you that when I was 18 in seminary, I didn't learn about it. And I certainly didn't even want to date till I was almost 22 years old. I never asked my father what names are coming up. I never said, I lived in New York for 2.5 years, and all I said is, don't talk to me about shidduchim. I'm not interested. I'm having my best life. It was the first time I didn't have like 4 sister roommates. It was the first time I was making a ton of money working in Manhattan. I was traveling. I was eating out. I was living my best life. And when someone said, oh, but I have such a good guy, why don't you want to be married? Well, I don't know. Like, if it didn't register for me, I don't deserve to want to be married yet. No one should put that on me. And then one day I called my father and I was like, Tom, am I ever going to date? And he was like, oh, I was waiting for you to ask. And that is the best case scenario that a child and a parent should have in this relationship of what should we say about dating? If someone's not into it and you have an open and honest relationship to know that, it's not, you're not ready. Why would you push someone? Why would you push something?
Right.
But if you are ready and in 19 and you're saying, okay, this is what I want to do next, then your parents know you, if you're open and honest again, and okay, she can do this, you know?
What was that switch for you of like living your best life
But
and then
I'll
being
tell
like,
you,
I'm never going to start dating?
my bank account kept going up, and I put some away for savings and some away for spending. And I had enough in my bank account, sick of the New York life that was just working to go party. And when I say party, I think I hit the movies and restaurants more than I did anything. And I had like a close knit circle of friends. I went to Florida, San Francisco, like that was my travels, Israel. And then like it got boring. I got boring with me. And it's not a
Mm-hmm.
reason so someone else should fulfill your excitable cycles of life, but it was like, oh, I could be doing much more than me. And that's when I said, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to bring someone else into my life. And I will tell you, Yossi, my husband, was the first guy I ever dated. And to me, it was, I know it doesn't sound so romantic, but it was almost like a mathematical equation. We loved talking to each other. Um, our backgrounds were kind of similar, even though I was so far out there, Los Angeles, and he was so far out there, Crown Heights for me. Still today, that's our one big, miscommunications in life of coming from different perspectives. But the families were familiar. His desires of who he wanted to be in life, I totally look up to. Kind. All I wanted was someone kind, and it was so easy for me to decide. It was like, oh yeah, and that was it. So I don't want to just say it was a mathematical equation, but we have to say, like your parents said, we have no reason to say no. He seems awesome. Go for it. Try it. Worst comes to worst, you say no. But
Right.
so many things align. If I want to get married and build my home, oh, I could see this person with me doing this in 10 years. We're going to be great together.
Mhm.
Did I need another trip? No. So okay, it was time.
So if somebody would come to you and say, Hindel, I don't know if I'm ready to start dating yet. Can you help me figure that out? What would your step number one be in figuring out with them or helping them figure out if they're ready?
So a lot of it is talking about the reason they feel they are ready or the reason they don't feel ready. To go into it with false pretenses of someone's going to make my life better and that's why I'm ready. I need someone to take care of me. That's just not going to work because you can get
Why?
smarter faster because you need to be your true self before you walk into that marriage because as a character, we remain with our characters that Hashem gave us. Like all of our netzach, hod, yesod, all our emotional attributes, Hashem has wired us a specific way. So to be like, oh, but I'm going to tap into, yesod and he's yesod, it's a benefit for me, but I don't become that. So to pretend that I'm now going to be what he wants me to be because he's exciting, because he's wealthy, because he's good looking, that's not enough. Or in 2 years, it won't be enough. Even 5 years, that's just not enough. And then you've married for the wrong reasons. So to marry for the right reasons is, are you mature enough to understand that you're looking for an emotionally stable relationship where you can create a space for the two of you to make space for Hashem? Because this is the equation for working relationships. Of course, we'll always need some help. We always might need to outsource and speak to a therapist. We will have to reevaluate our priorities every now and then. But I made a choice and he's incredible. Let's always get back to our choices and see why did I want this? If you want it to get out of home, and I've spoken to someone recently and I'm trying to remember who it was and I can't, but someone who's the oldest of many children. And she said, oh, I got married. I just need to get out of the house.
Mm.
Now, Baruch Hashem, she's married and it's been 30 years, but it's not the reason we want to get married. Now,
Right.
thank God she looked for the correct things to look for because she wanted to get out of the house, but at least she knew that it has to add up to her equation.
Mhm. It's almost like I'm hearing two opposite things at the same time. Because on the one hand, you need to be whole with yourself and not think that he's going to your husband's going to fill this need. And on the other hand, what you said was like you got bored being with you. You're like, there's more here. It feels almost like two opposite things.
But I had already evolved into understanding who I was. And we'll talk about therapy also because I did that at 19 and I think it's very important to talk about. But at some point, the boredom, it didn't say, oh, I need someone to entertain me. The boredom came with, I'm sick of myself, my selfish life. I know I am wired for something bigger and better. Okay, so let me look for who's going to complete me in that way and be the reunification of my soul, giving back to me with more meaning. So I'm not looking for someone to entertain me, to take care of me, to take away my sadness or my problems, or to give me jewels. Like Manas Friedman, he said it before, and I hope I'm quoting it correctly, but when you look in the mirror and you're sick of seeing yourself, you're ready to bring someone else in.
But not
If
from a
you
place of like, I hate myself, so this person's gonna fix me.
no, we have to love ourselves so much that now we want more for ourselves. I know someone who got a studio apartment, spent a fortune redecorating, and was like, I think now I'm ready. Actually, you're not ready in your studio apartment because there's not even room for an extra bed in that apartment. So you actually made yourself very secure and homey without anyone else taking up your space. When you tell me that you are living out of a suitcase or you got yourself a 2-bedroom apartment or this is temporary, then there's space for someone else. But as soon as you get caught into the me, I, my money, my degree, my job, or my place in the family, you're losing your sense of self when to allow someone else into that space. And you have to allow Hashem and your husband into that space. So literally the threesome has to be very, very solid. You have to be stable enough to know these answers for yourself. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to be whole with yourself enough that you know that there's more for you and that you have what to give and it's not all about you.
Yeah,
From
exactly.
from a healthy place, not from it's so interesting.
Exactly. If I can, Esther, I would like to tell you, because I think it's helpful, and I tell my students this, and it should sit with people when they hear this. But my biological mother died when I was 2.5. My father remarried a year and a half later. My stepmom Olivia, who raised me, and she's my mother. Now, at 19, I was a head counselor in a camp, and my stomach started to twist. I had a really difficult year in seminary. I was really taken advantage of by many people in the staff. I was also loved and adored by many people in another part of the staff, but it was such a
Wow.
psychotic year for me. Yeah, it was really pathetic. and my stomach literally twisted and they thought I needed an operation. Really, it was just a psychological drama that I allowed to, manifest in my body as opposed to coming out on the outside. So when I got home, my mom, Olivia, she sent me to a therapist, but she didn't call it a therapist because in 1993, no one said the word therapy. It was whispered. And she said, I'm going to
Right.
teach you to a friend of mine. She's going to teach you how to breathe. And so I went to this woman, Marilyn, who till today is very much my therapist. When I need any help, I call Marilyn.
Wow,
Yeah,
really?
she happened to have made Aliyah, so she followed me here. And she's been through my life through, it could have been a 10-year break or a 15-year break, but she has been with me she's known me since, well, she knew me younger, but at 19 when I went to her, she is the one that's giving me the tools. And she's not there, most therapy should not be there it's a goal-oriented therapy. You don't need to be in therapy for life, okay? Stop fetching to your therapist and she's going to keep telling you that you're perfect. Stop it. What can you do to get out of therapy? How do you have the tools to grow up and get out? So when I was 19 and I said, oh, you're not here to teach me how to breathe, are you? And she's like, well, I think we should talk about your dead mother. And I was like, no one mentions my dead mother. Not my father, who had to get remarried right away. Not my stepmom, who raised us as the mother. Not my family in New York, who was, had a hard time balancing the West Coast and the East Coast family with the dead members of the family. And it was quite a sad situation. And I
Wow.
was letting this manifest in my body, and it was terrible. It was eating me up from the inside. And what she said was, okay, when are you moving to Crown Heights? And I said, I'll be moving in 8 weeks through the summer. So I actually gave my job of being the head counselor in this camp to a friend of mine. And I, once a week, went to therapy. I went biking in between. I went to San Francisco. Like I took some time for me and I went to therapy once a week. And that hour was precious. And what she basically explained is you can go through life hiding behind all the things that happen to you and be objective about it. But if you go subjectively and understand that you've gone through a somewhat of a trauma, and I say somewhat because everyone has gone through something, but if
Mm.
you deal with it and talk about it, pay attention to it, then you're given the tools of, okay, that doesn't identify who Hindel is as a human. I don't want to be crushed by my story. It's only my narrative. It's not my soul. So how do I find my soul thrive out of the story, the narrative that I'm telling? So like when I started this podcast, I very much a part of me is the fact that I lost a daughter. I don't live every day with molded by the fact that I lost Shula, and so now I became who I became. I'm Hindel. I'm who Hashem made me. So when I was in therapy, she basically said, you need to know who you are. You don't get to be an adult without understanding your capabilities. And what she did was she made me go to family members. She made me go to my mother's friends. She made me speak to my father. Find out who is my mother that created me that died when I was 2. And how is my relationship with the dead mother? Because I didn't have a relationship with her. I didn't know. So much of who I am was I'm her blood, and yet I was completely divorced from that issue. So that's not healthy. And I think that everyone can understand this. Like this was me and my story, but everyone's got some sort of story. Now we don't need to be in therapy forever because of the traumas that were done to us when we were younger, or that we've experienced, or that we've witnessed. It's a story. We can work through it. We didn't get a lobotomy, we don't forget about it, but we now have the tools when it pops up in my life, how to deal with it. So when I wanted to get married, which wasn't yet, I just figured out who Hindle is. I am loving my new self. I was 19. I figured out I could work in Manhattan, got a job, living with my favorite aunt and uncle in New York, loving it. They were so kind to me. I had new family that I got to meet and know and get. I wasn't ready for marriage. I was ready for Hindle. So we
Mm.
can call it a selfish stage. But as soon as I realized, oh, I am bored with me and I'm pretty developed as a human, although I'll keep developing till the day I die at 180 in Mirz Hashem, I was ready to meet someone that would be with me. And it was a
Mm.
whole new way of experiencing dating. And I doubt if I dated earlier, it would have been easy for me, or I wouldn't have found my Bashar.
Wow. There's a lot there.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. When you say that you needed to find out who Hindel was, and separate that from the story, I guess, of your life, what would that look like? What do you mean the story? Like how other people would see you through that narrative of having lost your mother, how you saw yourself? What do you mean by that?
It's more for me how I see myself. But part
Okay.
of how I see myself was using the perspective of, oh, I'm being judged. So in school, specifically in high school, and I'll go even with elementary, because my mother died when I was 2.5, even though I had a very nice, of course we all have crap from when growing up also as children, but growing up in a very healthy home in many, many ways, when they would mention, oh, go home and have your mommy sign this paper, I thought everyone in 36 girls in my class I felt were staring at me because Hindel doesn't have a mommy. She has an Ema. So
Hmm.
oh my God, I lived with this. And you can speak to anyone that lost a parent. And by the way, if you date someone that lost a parent, it's not a demerit against them, but no, they needed to do work to heal from that loss. Don't think you're
Yeah.
going to marry someone that has a loss and they're perfect. There is stuff to deal with, and you need to deal with that because you bring that into your marriage. And even me dealing with that, bringing it into a marriage is, oh, I have a daughter. I'm pregnant with a girl. I had 3 boys first. Oh my God, this one, the first time I called my therapist, I was 32 years old. The last time I'd spoken to her, I was 19. And I said, Marilyn, I'm having a girl and I'm going to name her for my mother. I can't breathe.
Hmm.
Marilyn was there and she's like, all right, let's talk about it. That was the big gap of therapy. So I didn't see it come into my life again. But yeah, 15 years later, there I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do with it? 13 years later. So,
Wow.
there's it all our stuff comes up for us and we have to pay attention to it, and it does help. And for I'll just give you like a visual. When we come into this world, we are just a dot. We are soul. We are a tiny little soul that came down into this universe. Okay, as we grow, as we live, as we experience, our narrative gets written. So now instead of just a dot on a paper, we have a story being written. Every page we turn the page, my story is getting longer. I am now 50 years old. My story, I'm on my second book of life. I'm on my third book. I keep writing. But my soul, that's just that dot on the first paper, that has never changed. That's the soul Hashem gave me. And that soul was separated from my other part of my soul that completes me, and the story that Hashem created the world for. So me, my husband, and Hashem, that's why I'm down here. So things happen and I have to pay attention to it so I can get back to before my narrative has been told. What does my soul look like and what does it need? And what can I contribute as a soul in this world?
Hmm.
That's knowing who you are. That's
Okay.
creating a space in a marriage for understanding your purpose.
Hmm. So knowing who you are is reconnecting to that point, which is your soul. So you can find that point somewhere else. That's someone else's soul. It's so interesting because when you think of dating, it's like it's the narrative, it's the resumes. Resume is like the ultimate narrative. There's no
Oh,
there's no soul
which
in a
says nothing,
resume.
which we can talk about that
Yeah.
too, but I don't know what your next question was.
Wow. No, it's so interesting because what I'm hearing is that when you are able to connect to who you really are, that point within you, then you can really be able to sift through the narrative of the other person sitting across from you better when you're dating because you'll be
Yes.
able to
Yes.
access
So remember, if he's
those
sitting
points.
across and he's wearing a t-shirt that says husband material, you are able to look past a lot of his story. It's not the
Hmm.
story, it's the person. So in other words, it's almost not even about how you date. It's the relationship that you will build together for this person that you will call husband. Some people are terrible daters. I know this is shocking. We can do another podcast in a year or two when when your audience grows into the next stage of meeting Esther and what she's going to bring to the table. But the next stage is, if I am who I am and he's already who he is, then his story is not so much important to me. It's who he is at his soul level that connects to my soul level, and who are we together for Hashem? So the
Hmm.
question is, am I good for him? Is he good for me? And then the counterintuitive question, are we good for Hashem? But is he good for me is a very important question to ask,
And you need to know
because
who me is then.
yes,
Not is
so
he
he
good
needs to know
for
who he is. And it's not so,
yeah.
listen, there are people that marry people like me who have lost a parent. There are people that marry people that have gone through sexual abuse. There are people that marry products of divorce family. There are people that marry all sorts that grew up with no money, grew up with too much money. But that's not who they are that Hashem created them as. So let me find out who they are. And like we said, someone could be a bad dater, but it doesn't make him a bad husband. There could be a lot of mishap in the dating. It could be too serious, it could be too intense, it could be not fun enough. That's not the actual portrait of what your life is going to look like. And you have to sift through the narrative and say, but
Hmm.
who are we going to be?
Oh my gosh, I
And
love
if you're
this.
mature enough, you can do it. And sometimes you're not yet mature enough.
Right. If you're still defining yourself by your narrative and your story and you haven't yet connected to yourself, you're not ready yet to be able to spot that in somebody else,
Right.
through their narrative to
And
find
often
them.
when you're not ready, it's not because you're dishonest. It's because you've been telling yourself a story about you for so long, or your parents have. Do you know how many people come home from seminary and their parents already say, okay, so listen, we're so excited. You're already almost 19. So we're looking at a few guys and tell us when you're ready to get married. So the parents are living their dream of like, oh, we raised a child and she's going to give us nachas because soon she's going to give us grandchildren. But that girl needs a year. She needs to go to
Yeah.
school. She needs to find herself. She needs to live in her own apartment. Whatever it is, everybody's got a different what they need. But
Mhm.
when you're living through someone else's story, just make sure it's your story as well, not just what Bubby said or your parents say or some guy who's been chasing you for so long thinks that you are that person. Who
Mm.
am I? And they might be correct. Great. Look at your parents. They were correct.
Yeah. What are some practical ways you think that we can work on reconnecting with our soul, our neshama, that point within us, and breaking through the narrative of the story we've been telling ourselves?
Gosh. I wish I was wiser about this. It is so individual because at different stages of different people's lives, they should already be doing this. But I worked with a 28-year-old just yesterday, and she said, and I said, I don't care about your resume. I don't give a crap where you went to seminary 10 years ago. I really don't. And where you went to high school and where you were a head counselor, and it's absolutely irrelevant for me. At your age, I don't care about your degrees. I want to know who you are, that Hashem made you, like who you are, that you feel you are, you identify with, and what are you looking for? Give me 3 lines of each. You better be able to do that.
Mm.
If you can't do that, you need more time. You need more work. It doesn't happen by itself. What work will you be doing to get there? Can you speak to the hypnotherapist? Can you call the mashpia and say, I need to find out more of who I am? Let's work together. Who am I? What am I here for? And when you put up that mirror in front of you, you start to face reality. And again,
Mm.
if you need to do it with someone, you do it with someone. I think Sterna Ginsburg, I think that's her name, she has that book on working on yourself, finding out who
Yes.
you are. Do it. Do the exercise.
You mentioned earlier that you don't have to be kvetching to your therapist, and she validates that you're perfect and stay in therapy forever. So what advice do you have for somebody who wants to take this work deeper, whether they've been through something big that has become a defining story of themselves, whether they like it or not, or whether they're just trying to reconnect to that dot within them? What should they know going into therapy or more professional spaces? What would be helpful for them to know?
So first of all, you actually have to find the best. You can't just go through like what we say here, the coupa, your what do you call a coupa in America? Your system, your medical system. Okay, oh,
Yeah.
she's on board and she's free, so I got it. Like this is your life
Mm.
and this is your soul. Find someone who's really, really good. There are
Mm.
life coaches that are really good. You don't need
Yeah.
to be, but there are people that are trained to understand what you've gone through. So obviously, if you've been molested for a few years, you're going to have more time that you need to process, to understand that that's not who you are, but it's very much part of your story. Someone who just said we grew up and we didn't have a lot of money, that's tough on people. It's not the same story. And in 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 4 months, you can say, okay, what will I do different to feel security so that I'm emotionally stable and not worried every day when I come home that life is unpredictable? It's short. So depending on what you go through, you have to honor who you are and say, I most likely will need more help. But when you pick a therapist that will honor you, understand your background, I really believe most therapists should understand your Frumkeit level, understand your background. We have a different orbit. We work in a different sphere. They don't even need to be religious, but they need to honor who you are. Like I sent someone recently to therapy, a guy who was in yeshiva, and the woman was like, "You're in yeshiva, but you're 20. You should be getting a degree." And all he wanted to do was become a rabbi and get his smicha. So she totally obliterated the way he was raised and made him feel inadequate. So he didn't
Wow.
choose the right person. Thank God he told me pretty fast. And I was like, get out. This is not someone that's
Mm.
respecting your soul. So that's different.
Mhm.
Know that they have to be excellent. Know that you do not need to be in long term. When Shula died, it took me 2 years. Probably took me 10 years to be half normal. But it took me 2 years of therapy. I didn't need therapy after 2 years. And that's a
Wow, that's
child
so
dying.
interesting.
But
Yeah.
according to what has been going on in your life, that's approximately the amount of time you'll be there. A lot of therapists really just want for the next 5 years, we'll be working on whatever, $250 a week. Find out who you're working with.
Hmm. So it doesn't have to be long term. It can be some
Goal
go in with a
oriented.
goal oriented. Yeah, because for a therapist, they don't want to lose a client. I mean, not all, but you know,
Right.
it's
Besides
easy
me,
to.
I'd be so happy when you get engaged and you stop calling.
That's true. That's
But
true.
the
Means you
truth
don't
is
do
that
your
when I
job.
work with guys and the women, both sides, they'll often call me in their marriage, which I find very interesting because they know I know them really well and
Hmm.
separately from how they're wired. So I'm able to, just help navigate certain questions that come up in their marriage. So that's been also
Wow.
a treat,
I
which
have
is
heard
part of the
that.
reason. Yeah, that's part
Yeah,
of why
people
I want
calling
to go
it.
back to school so that I could really understand the mechanism of what's going on deeper.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Let me see if there was something I wanted to ask before the last question. What would you tell somebody who's in a big rush to get married? They're in a seminary, and I had friends like this who were like, I just can't wait to stop making babies and have a massive family and get married, and like this is my next goal. And that's their next big goal after leaving seminary.
I think it's amazing. I really do. If you've been drawing your wedding gown and you've been working on who you want to be as a wife and you just want it so bad, you probably will be amazing at it because you're going to pay attention to what the marriage needs. And so if that's who you are, who am I to say don't do it? Go ahead.
Hmm.
Have 5 babies by the time you're 25. People have been happy. Excellent.
Wow.
But not because you're forced, because someone else wants it. If it's what you want, amazing. I would suggest you listen to a few podcasts, you check in with the coach beforehand. Like there's a few things you need to pay attention to, like priorities. Don't list your non-negotiables. What are you looking for that's actually important? What are you looking for that's not so important and could be shoved down to the bottom of the list? There are a few things you want to pay attention to, if you're 19 and dating.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you want it also when you're
Yeah.
25 and dating.
And in terms of this is an interesting question. I didn't ask you this, but in terms of the time that it takes one person over another to find their basher,
Oh,
what do you think about that? Because I remember people telling me like when I told them how when I got it, you're so lucky, like it was so easy for you. Um, and I would always be like, I mean, like yeah. And then some people like it takes them longer. Just even if they want to get married already from seminary, it takes them five, whatever, how many every years. What do you think about that?
I don't know that it's really a question because who's really in control? And I
Right,
don't
you're
think that people are not married because they didn't really search. Like Hashem's really running their world. And sometimes it
hmm
seems really unfair because they've been doing everything. You could
yeah.
ask the question, and I always ask this question if I'm dealing with someone 25 and over, and I say, at what point of your dating did you really want to date for marriage? And
Hmm.
often they'll say, oh, just this year. But
Wow,
you've been dating since you're 20.
that's an
For 5 years
interesting
you've been dating,
question.
but you really actually only wanted it now, which probably means you sabotaged all your dating experiences beforehand. Now,
That's so interesting.
it is interesting. And sometimes I'll say, was there anyone that you dated before that you had a really nice time with, but you're like, too tall, whatever it is, you fill in the blank.
Because
Because
you knew it
then
wasn't the
that's
right time.
ridiculous. And then you say no for the wrong reasons. But it probably just means you weren't ready. And so for no reason at all, not even consciously, you were like, yeah, no, I didn't like the way he ate. Okay,
Hmm.
you
Wow.
know. So I really do feel it's a 50-50 of Hashem, not a 50-50. It's all Hashem and all you. Like you have to really know when you want it. And then also Hashem, did he put your shirt in your face? Not yet. Sometimes that happens.
Hmm. Is there anything that I didn't ask you or that we didn't talk about that you think is important to bring up?
Um, I think it's very important to have honest conversation with your parents.
Hmm.
Some people, if you see your parents talking about this in high school already, have the conversation already in high school. If you see your parents talking about this when you come back from seminary, have this conversation. And what it looks like is honest conversation. Do you know how many parents call me? This is shocking. This happened this week. A parent called me. She wants her daughter to get her picture. It's after seminary. She should get her picture taken because for her resume, which means the girl's 18, right? 18 and a half,
Mhm.
maybe 19. And the girl, I know because I'm coaching the guy she's dating without her parents knowing, because he's calling me and finding out stuff, and I'm coaching him. Now, she sounds wonderful, nowhere near getting married, certainly not even ready to leave her parents' home. So I tell him, you got to back away from this. Ask these questions. If these are the answers, most likely she's not for you. Walk away. And meanwhile, the mom's calling me about this girl, like, get on the same page. Now, I
Mm.
was open and honest enough to ask my parents, what do you think about me dating at 19? Because I was in New York and dates. I know my aunts were telling me there's this guy, like, oh, no, I'm just not interested. I want to have fun. I don't want to get stuck married yet. That's how I thought of marriage. So, no, I mean, listen, I was one of 12. I was very much a helper in the house. I did a lot of work just for family. I wanted time away from the responsibility of that. But if you can sit down and have a conversation with your parents and say, I know you think that I want to go on shluchas. I don't. And you think that I dress this way because when I'm home, I'm respectful. I actually don't when I'm not at home. Don't set me up with this type of person. It's not going to work. It's what you want me to be, but it's not who I am. So the discrepancy and the amount of dates and the research going on when it's not even a viable option is
Mm.
so sad. It's so sad. So part of knowing who you are also comes to the conclusion of this is the conversation I need to have with my parents. Because if you're self aware, you want your parents to be aware of who you are. So without going there, you're certainly not having that conversation with your parents. But it's a must, being honest with your parents of
Yeah.
who you are.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. I've seen that a lot. Like
Yes,
two different worlds
yes,
sometimes.
yes.
Wow. That's so important.
I have a couple notes here since I've been talking off the cusp here. A quote from Edith Eger, and she says, she wrote The Choice, and I can't believe how many students this year raised their hand and told me they never read The Choice. Guys, read The
Oh,
Choice
read the
by Edith
choice.
Eger. Read it and read it again. But she
Yes.
said, would you like to be married to you? When we say, like, if you're in a group of friends and you're not feeling confident, or you're not feeling the prettiest, or you're not feeling the most valuable or the most wanted, like, would you like to be married to you? No, because you're not really liking yourself right now because you have so much doubt. So get
Mm.
into the space where you want to be married to someone like you. Now, it doesn't need
Mm.
to be, you should know that it's more common to marry someone that's opposite than you, not your twinsy, because then you don't push each other in the marriage to think differently, to become a different person, to grow as a different person. So it's better to marry someone different than you than the same as you. But we know many twinsy couples and they're just fabulous and they have a very simple marriage because life is so simple. They really are wired the same. They think the same. But it's harder to grow in a marriage and become a bigger person when there's no one making you say, okay, wait, let me put myself in his shoes again. Let me see where he's coming from. Why is he upset? What is triggering him right now? Stuff like that.
Mhm.
So, would you like to be married to you? I think that's a very important thought.
For me, it would be depending on the day.
Yeah, like most people. So, I guess the other thing is, really, I am a coach, but I'm not pushing my agenda. At $150, I'm not going to get rich on you. And I really want you to stop calling me and get married. Really, you need to reach out for help. A lot of people can't navigate this on their own. It's 2025. There is so much stimulation coming from our phones, from movies, from billboards, from outside, from money. To fit the bill of husband, wife, sanctity, matrimony with Hashem and purpose is very hard to come across with your perspectives aligned and your priorities straight. And sometimes you need help navigating. I don't care if it's a parent that's very healthy in their awareness. I don't care if you go to an aunt, a relative, a best friend that's already married and has chosen wisely that you feel you like. Speak to people, reach out, get some help navigating if you feel like you're blind at what's going on in front of you, or if that you keep recreating the same pattern over and over again with all the dates like he's so boring, he's so boring. No, I dumped him, he's so boring. What? He's not your entertainer. He's not there to keep your life exciting. What are you doing to bring excitement? You know? So if you see a pattern happening, go get help, reach out. There are people that are trained in this, and there are people that are wiser than you because you're young, hopefully.
And my final question is that if you could go back to the first year that you left home for the first time
Mm,
and can share one thing based on everything that you know now with yourself, what's the one thing that you would share?
wow. That pay attention more to your relationships before you leave home because these are the people the most usually that you're going to want in your life and they're going to be in your
Mm.
life. So I know that when I left home, I was so happy to leave, get out, have a year on my own. But at the end of the day, I was so homesick from the space that I was in a different country to reach out to my family members. And a lot of my relationship building with different siblings and parents was that year that I left home. Imagine if I worked on that already before. Like, I shouldn't have had to leave home to build that kind of relationship. But I'm glad that I saw it for what it was when I was 18 and then started building a relationship. I
Yeah,
hope
those
that's
are
helpful.
really, yeah, it's so interesting. You're talking about siblings mainly? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and parents actually, both. I
Siblings
mean,
and
we were
parents.
writing 13-page letters and leaving, we would press record and play a tape. So I was
Wow.
sending my favorite songs and my favorite stories of what happened in the day. Like, who are you? We didn't talk. We were so busy going to school, trying to make it, making our
Yeah.
friendship circles, looking cool, being in the right space, like that we didn't
Mm.
invest in our relationships with siblings, and certainly not with parents who are also very busy, but we could have. We did it later,
Um,
you could do it before.
mm. Those are really the most important. We get so caught up in friends usually when we leave home. It's easy to forget the people who will be there and were there and are still there if you tap into that. Love it. Wow. Hindel, thank you so much. Thank you for
Thank
joining us
you.
today,
Thanks for having me
sharing
on.
all of this
Really honored.
wisdom.
And Hashem should give you strength to continue doing the work. I know that you inspire many,
Amen.
and keep bringing up
Amen.
all the topics. Nothing should be secret. It should all be exhausted and spoken out loud.
That's the goal. That's the goal. And this is something we haven't spoken about yet. And I'm really, really excited that now we've explored it. And
Good.
thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of On Your Own. If you like this episode or think it will be useful to someone else, please leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. I would love to connect with you. If you've got any questions, feedback, or ideas for future episodes, you can email me at onyourownpodcast@gmail.com. See you next week, and in the meantime, happy adulting.